How you doing, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel, whichever it may be. As you can see today, I'm taking a look at the Rocky Legacy Collection Deluxe Edition Rocky the Underdog from the Sly Stallone Shop. Now this is the deluxe edition. There is a standard edition and a ultimate edition. I went for the deluxe edition. The difference being with the Ultimate Edition, you get a side of beef hanging from hooks with a diorama to replicate that scene where he's using the slab of beef, the half a cow, as a punch bag, and you get a second head sculpt. I wasn't impressed with the second head sculpts, and I didn't feel like I needed the diorama because the stairwell is how I wanted to pose him. I do regret not getting the slab of beef because I thought about it afterwards, and I would have liked to have posed it with my Predator 2 City Hunter figure, posing them throwing the disc towards that slab of beef or the half a cow. Would have looked fantastic like it did in the movie, but you live and learn. I will mention that I should have reviewed this figure over a month ago. It went missing in the post. It was posted out to me and it went missing. It was in Nambia. It's gone missing in Nambia, but Sideshow in all their splendor and glory with their fantastic customer service sent me out a replacement, so that figure is somewhere in Nambia. It disappeared on me. But guys, please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps the channel out. So moving on, we'll have a look at the box. You can see we have a watercolor image of Rocky doing his bit of shadow boxing at the bottom of the stairwell of the Philadelphia Art Museum, I believe it is. We have an American flag and a Italian flag either side of the building. And then at the side we have Rocky written, and then on the back we have an image of the figure and the stand and a list of what comes with it. So, and then if I slide off this sleeve here, if I can get it off with one hand, there we go. We have an image of Rocky doing his jogging and an image in the background. I know it's very dark, guys. I'll just brighten that up a little bit. A picture of the art museum in the back as well, and then some warnings and details. And then on the front we have the figure itself and all the hands that it comes with, and an empty space there for the secondary head sculpt that, in my opinion, looks more like he's having a stroke than anything. That's why I chose not to get it. And then we have this box here, which is the box with the base in it, because it's such a large base. And as you can see, it says Rocky in the traditional gold text, a picture of the steps and the building, the Philadelphia Art Museum behind it. On the side it says Rocky, and then at the back, just like the figure box, it has a list of what comes inside and shows you what comes inside. So without further ado, let's get the two of these out of the box and give them a quick pan down before we get into the accessories. So here we have a quick pan down of the figure before we get into the accessories and the details, and just starting from bottom to top, you know, moving up from bottom to top, we'll have a look at the steps, the iconic steps of the Philadelphia Art Museum that he runs up. And then moving up, we have his officially licensed Chuck Taylors on, which is absolutely fantastic, and I do believe that's a first for 1/6 scale figures. And then moving up, we have all the weathering and all the details, the screen accurate sweat and stuff that's completely on point, which looks absolutely fantastic. And I do want to mention, guys, I was a bit in two minds as to mention this, but I do think it's important that to tell you that this figure has not been sent to me by Sly Stallone Shop. I'm going to be giving a completely unbiased review. I'm under no obligation to give this any kind of a stellar review. I did want to point that out because I know there is people that Sly Stallone have sent this figure and other figures to in the past to give an early review, and there have been some reviews out there that, in my opinion, let's just say maybe not completely honest and are under obligation to give it a stellar review so that they can get more early releases to review on their channel. So I thought it was important to point that out. So there we have a quick pan down of the figure. and we'll get into the accessories. And thank God there isn't too many accessories, because my analytics are telling me that you guys do not like my accessories section. So there we go. Moving on, we have all of the accessories that come with the Rocky Underdog Deluxe version. And I'm going to start off with the hands. As you can see, we have 4 open palms and 2 closed fists. Just looking at the open palmed hands there, you can see that, in my opinion anyway, the paint applications aren't anything spectacular. There's a bit of a shine off the fingers, which I'm not a big fan of. They look a bit plasticky. There's a bit too much of a shine off the fingers. There is a bit of redness to the knuckles, which is, you know, a nice little detail. You know, it's on point. And you do have the cuticles in the nails, but just the texture and the shine off the fingers is, it's a bit of a letdown. You know, they just shine too much. You know, it's not great. The mold itself isn't anything fantastic either. There isn't a whole lot of depth to the wrappings that are, you know, put around his hands. There isn't a whole lot of separation in them. I would really like to have seen the Sly Stallone Shop make these out of real material. I think that would have elevated them to a much higher realistic level if they'd have just wrapped these hands in, you know, in a material. I've seen it done. The present toys and the Topo drifter outfit for the Batman 22 actually has real material around the hands, and it makes them look way more realistic. And I think Sly Stallone could have incorporated that into this figure here, into these hands, and just made them look so much better. I am considering maybe making my own ones with some custom, you know, with some material on them myself. And as for the paint on the wrapping, you know, the yellow airbrush paint on them, it's just lacking. It's not giving off the effect that it's supposed to give off, that it's like stained, dirty material. You know, it's just lacking a little bit. It's just airbrushed yellow, you know, paint just scattered around them. It's nothing fantastic. I'm not overly impressed with them. I mean, they'll do the job. They're not the centerpiece of the figure, but just not overly impressed with those wrappings at all. I think they could have been done so much better. The closed fist hand again. I mentioned the wrappings and real material. I understand that it would have been way more difficult to do with the closed fist, but I'm sure it's not possible to do. I'm sure it could have been done. And then we have the hands that realistically should only come with the Ultimate Edition. I don't know why they're packed with the Deluxe, and I assume they're in the standard version as well. But you don't get the slab of beef, the half a cow, you know, the Diorama. So I don't understand why these bloody hands have been added to the Deluxe. As for the paint on them, there is a little bit of a shine off them to look like wet blood, kind of. It's nothing spectacular, but it does the job, you know. I do like the blood splatter though. I do like, you know, the way it's applied. It does look fairly decent and realistic. It just, with it on top of these poorly done wrappings, it just takes away from it a little bit, and it's a little bit of a fail. But I won't be using those hands anyway, because I don't have the Ultimate Edition with the Diorama. So it leaves those hands null and void, so to speak. So moving on, just move these out of the way, and we'll have a look at his steps, or his Diorama, so to speak. These are made to replicate the steps that he runs up of the Philadelphia Art Museum. I'm pretty sure it's the Philadelphia Art Museum. It is, yeah. And very, very nicely done, I have to say. The detail in these steps is absolutely fantastic. You can see that we have the graded area, or the shore, whatever you want to call it. And it's got depth to it. It's not just a print. It's actually, you know, has some depth in it, and it does have those little slots in there, which adds to that realism. There's some rusty effects done, added to it all in these areas here, which is done really, really well. Quite impressed with that. You can see that there's slabs of concrete that there's been, damage put to it. There's chips in it, has dents in it, and it looks worn and weathered and used. It's finished in a really nice kind of concrete looking grey. The slight little shine off it, a little shimmer when it catches the light. It's not the end of the world. Doesn't take too much away from the effect, but if it was matted down, it would look more realistic again. It would look more like a concrete slab. You can see all in the middle, there's a wash put through to make it look like the cement, that's behind the slab stuff, this lighter grey, and it looks really, really well. And even the finer details of the steps, there is so many different colours in there. There's different hues, different tones, different shades. There's a dry brush in there and scuffing and all on the edges there. You can see all that, that dry brushing. And it's done really, really well. At the sides there, you can see more of the concrete slabs and the separation, the wash put in the gaps, and some gouges and some cracks in them, and they look really well. Same with the back. They've left no detail out. Even the back is detailed with the slabs and the damage and the gouges and all the damage to the concrete. Looks really well. And what we have here as well is these magnetic pieces here, these nameplates. One of them saying Rocky, and the other one saying, if I can get it out of the light, the Italian Stallion written on that one. These are made out of plastic. They've got magnets on them, and they just go on the side of the stand there. They're meant to be kind of nameplates, so you can put them on the side of the the stairwell. You can put one on either side if you so choose, and they are quite strong. They're not going anywhere. Rocky on this side in the iconic gold text, and then we have the Italian Stallion written on this side. I think it's a nice touch. It's not something I'm going to be using, but it is a nice touch to have those as an option to put on the side. And I kind of wish more companies would do stuff like this. Make the nameplates magnetic. Make them so they can come off. Because in a lot of cases with these figures, the nameplate, like if it said Rocky on the front there, it would take away from the realism or what you're trying to create with the figure. So a lot of companies should take a leaf out of Sly Stallone Shop's book here and make these nameplates magnetic. Make them so they can be removed if you don't want them. If you want a more realistic look to your stand or your diorama, it would be an option. In regard to how the figure stands, you can see there isn't a gap there for a crotch grabber or a waist grabber because he is magnetic. He's magnetically based, and that is a really poor way of showing this. So I'm just going to change the angle out actually. And there we go, that's better. Just for illustrative purposes, this is a much better angle to show you. Just showing you there that he does have magnets on his feet, and I must say they are quite strong magnets. I'm quite impressed with how strong they are. You can see he's not really going anywhere. I'm kind of rocking him quite vigorously there, and he isn't going anywhere. So for now, the ankles are strong enough to hold him. I don't have any in-art products that have the magnets on the soles of the feet on the bases, but I do believe that they're not very strong at all. So Sly Stallone have done a stellar job there at making the strong magnets, and there are magnets on every step. All 3 steps have magnets on them, so you can actually pose them doing the run up the steps. If I can just do this very crudely, you can pose him as if he's running up those steps. Let me just get this right. I hope I don't make a fool out of myself now by saying this and it doesn't work. And there we go. You can pose him as if he's running up those stairs, guys, and that is really, really nice looking. That is great. I'm really impressed that they put a magnet on each step so you can mimic him running up those steps. And the fact that they've detailed the back of the base makes far more sense now if you consider considering posing him as if he's, you know, running up the stairs. So that's a really good touch on Sly Stallone's behalf, to just give us those magnets on each step, so you can, you know, put him running up the stairs. So here we have the Rocky Underdog figure pretty much straight up as he comes out of his box, and starting in my usual fashion from bottom to top, we'll start with his footwear. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, this is probably one of my favorite parts of this figure. I know that sounds a bit odd, but his shoes or his trainers look pretty cool. They are made of material, they're not a plastic mold. They do have a real lace, although that lace is a little bit long. That's an absolute easy fix. I just have to basically shorten the loops a little bit, possibly pop a little bit of glue there, and then snip off the excess. So I will get around to that, so don't be put off by the length of those laces. That is an absolutely easy fix. They just need a little bit of adjustment, and the excess needs to be snipped off. But just starting off with the sole, you can see the sole looks absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of detail in there. There's little scuffs in them, there's gouges in them, there's weathering all over the sole. In the details, in the finer details in the front, you can see the textured bits are all kind of got weathering and wear inside them, and looks really, really nice. My only kind of gripe is the top half of the trainer doesn't match the trainer. It looks like a 10-year-old sole has been put on a brand new pair of trainers. You can see the front has absolutely no weathering on them at all, which isn't exactly movie accurate. If you look back at the movie, the trainers he's wearing were very, very worn all over. As you can see at the side there, before I go any further, they are officially licensed Chuck Taylor's Converse All-Stars, which is, as far as I know, is the very first for 1/6 scale figures to have a licensed pair of trainers. Hot Toys don't even bother doing it at all. And you can see on the back there, we have the little All-Star kind of patch on the back of the sole, which absolutely should be there. The stitching is a little bit oversized, but it's completely forgivable. It still looks absolutely fantastic. The reason I jumped to that is because I want to go back to the weathering. I assume that the reason why the front of them isn't weathered and all the top half is because Converse probably wouldn't allow them to do it as part of the agreement for using the license. I'd imagine that Converse said to them, you're not allowed to weather the actual trainer, so that we can see a fairly decent pair of Converse Chuck Taylors, and you're only allowed to weather the sole. That's just a speculation, guys. Otherwise, why wouldn't they have scuffed up the front of them and, you know, weathered the sides? I know I'm going to be doing it myself. I'm going to weather the front of them and possibly weather a bit of the material part as well, just to get them a bit more screen accurate. I know that lace is a bit of a nuisance at the minute, but as I said, it's an easy fix, and I will get around to it. The eyelets as well are made out of a metal as well. All these eyelets on the laces are all made out of a metal, and you can see the lace is completely real. A vast difference to the shoes that he's wearing on the Rambo figure, the Sly Stallone Rambo figure. If you've seen my review, I wasn't happy with those shoes at all. They look very dollish. They looked like his feet were trying to burst out of the shoes, and they weren't executed very well at all. But these are executed quite well, in my opinion, and they absolutely look the part. They look absolutely fantastic. Really impressed with them. So moving up to his tracksuit bottoms, completely movie accurate, completely on point. The absolutely right shade of grey. You can see the weathering in the front of them there as it was in the movie. You can see all the little rip bits. There's rips in the knee. You know, you can just see the rip there, and just all the areas that would be worn the most. You know, this section here, you can see there's another little rip in them as well. And he has what looks like going kind of almost down his leg, just past his knee. If I can get his trouser leg up, he has an undergarment there underneath, which I think is to represent a pair of long johns that he was wearing underneath his tracksuit bottoms in the movie. and you know, they don't go all the way down. You see that vein work in his shin there. That's quite a hefty vein sticking out of his shin there. That's quite a relief on that vein. But yeah, he does have a pair of long johns on underneath, and it shows through the tears. So that is completely on point. He does have a real drawstring for the bottoms as well, so you can undo them, and and you can see there again, he does have that undergarment on, those long johns, underneath. They look like they are pulled up very high, but looking back on the movie, that's how they wore. They were pulled up quite high in the movie, so it is all on point. It's completely movie accurate. It does look the part. Very impressed with how it looks, and even though it is just a plain grey tracksuit, I'm still very impressed with them. You can see that, I'm sure anyway, you can see that you can pick up on the little bits of weathering all around them and running through them to make them look weathered and worn and grubby. Even on the backs of the knees, there's some weathering effect, and it's not a paint. It's like a dye has been put in to add the weathering. Anybody who's familiar with 1/6 scale weathering, it's usually a paint put on the garments, but it's almost like it's a dye that's been put in to add the weathering. And you can see on the back there, you can see the completely movie accurate Italian stallion print on the back of his t-shirt, and it looks completely on point. It looks fantastic. Where it was written on the back of his t-shirt, or it was painted on, or something on the back of his t-shirt in the movie, and it is printed on really, really well. It is so well done. It's not going anywhere, guys. I can't see that peeling off or going anywhere. I don't think that's ever going to flake or peel. It's exceptionally done. Top marks to Sly Stallone for how they done that, and for how they done the weathering as well. Top marks. Really, really, really done nicely. Just moving around to the chest and the front of his t-shirt, you can see that he's quite weathered in all the right places. Around the neck where he'd be sweating, under his arms, are quite sweaty and grubby and grimy, and they absolutely look the part. It looks extremely screen accurate, and you can see the separation there between the long sleeved hoodie he's wearing with the t-shirt over it again, which is on point. The stitching on it all is all well done as well. It's quite impressed with how it's all stitched as well and put together. The tailoring is quite nicely done, and the material is quite thin as well. It looks real. It sits real. Looking at the hoodie there, perfect example. The hoodie sits really, really, really realistically. It's not too thick, so it doesn't bunch up. It sits exactly how it should. It is functioning. If you so choose, you can pop that hood up. I'm not sure why you do that, but you can absolutely put that hood up if you like. But I'm not sure why you do that. So it just sits really, really, really well. It's overall the tracksuit is absolutely fantastic. And then underneath all of the layers that he has, he does have the blue towel on him that he did have wrapped around his neck in the movie. But I'm pretty sure in the movie there was more of that towel showing. I'm going to try and pull it a bit more out there if I can without pulling that drawstring out. No, I've pulled them out. I don't particularly want to pull them out, so I will deal with all of that a bit later on. But yeah, he does have the blue towel on, but it just should be showing a bit more. It should be a bit more wrapped around his neck. If you look back, there should be more of that towel visible. But it's an easy fix. If I just get myself a little tweezers and pull that out a little bit further, I'll get that tucked in, or I'll get that lace tucked back in. I'll get that sorted out off camera in a little bit. So there we go for now. Yeah, so in regard to the outfit, I'm really impressed. It looks on point. It looks screen accurate. It fits him quite well. As I said, I know it's a plain tracksuit that he's wearing, but it absolutely looks the part and it looks movie accurate. But I do want to mention again those hands. they let the figure down. They're just not detailed enough. It takes away from the figure. If that was wrapped in an actual material, and didn't have this very low relief, poorly sculpted wrapping around it, it would just elevate the figure to the next level. And that yellow airbrush paint that they have, the staining on it, just isn't done very well at all. It just takes away from the figure in the grander scheme of things. I really think that real wrappings on that would have made such a big difference, even just for the open palmed hands. If they couldn't do it for the closed fists, even just do it for the open palmed hands would have made all the difference. And I do hope that some customizer, or just throwing a name out there, Jackson Zoo, maybe to put out some, a set of custom hands for them with real material wrapped around them. I think that would be absolutely fantastic if somebody was to do that, just like the Present Toys or the Topo Drifter outfit. Another thing I want to mention about the body, as far as I can tell, this is the exact same body that they use for every Sly Stallone figure. They've made a custom body for Sly Stallone, which absolutely makes sense that they use every body for every figure, because it's Stallone every time. Although he got more ripped for certain movies. I mean, if they make a Rocky 3 figure, I don't think they could use this body. I don't think he was this bulky in Rocky 3. He was far more ripped. So they are going to have to change the body at some point, I think. Probably use a Fison at some point. But as far as I can tell, this body matches with the Cobra figure and the Rambo figure. And I do have the other two figures, so we will do kind of a side-by-side very shortly. The one thing I want to mention, though, with the body is a letdown. Look how loose those legs are. Those legs are very, very loose. That is a major, major letdown. That is not ideal at all. Those legs will not stay in place at all. There's no strength in them whatsoever, which I'm really disappointed in. Ankle joints are fine. They're strong for now. I say for now. They're safe for now. The elbow joints are double jointed, although they are a little bit restricted. I can feel the joints in them. They are a double joint, but the bicep, does restrict the full articulation in the double jointed elbow. And they didn't do that with the Cobra figure, which was a letdown, that they didn't double joint the elbows for the Cobra figure. But it's kind of cutting corners. I don't understand why this figure has double joints, but the Cobra figure doesn't have the double joints. So there is a little bit of inconsistency there. And the same with the legs. They've used the same body, but the legs on this figure for some reason are really, really loose. He does have double jointed knees as well, which is, ideal for that running pose. But yeah, in general, I'm quite pleased with the figure. But let's get closer in on this head sculpt, and we'll get into the final details of the head sculpt and take a look at that. And here we have the head sculpt, as close as I can get it, really. And I'm not underwhelmed with the head sculpt. I don't think it's anything terrible. I think it's absolutely acceptable as Rocky Balboa in 1976. I think it looks just like Stallone did in 76. It's a bit of a downgrade from the prototype, I will add, though. But my issue is the paint applications. I think the paint applications are just... They're very flat. They're a bit soft, but I think flat is the best way I can describe them. There isn't a whole heap of detail in the paint work. You can see he does have a slight 5 o'clock shadow at the side there, which is nicely done. His lips aren't too pink. They're painted quite well. There is a nice little bit of redness in the eyes as well, and they have the shape of Stallone's eyes done quite well. I mean, we know who it is, It's just the paint applications are just a little bit lacking. There's no richness to them. They're a little bit dull. That's the best way I can put them, you know. They're certainly not on Hot Toys standards, and maybe I shouldn't be comparing Sly Stallone figures to Hot Toys. But if you are going to be a competing 1/6 scale action figure manufacturer, I think you do kind of compare yourself to Hot Toys and try and meet their standards as best as you can to be some kind of success. Because let's have it right, guys. Everybody compares their figures to Hot Toys. Everybody does it. Every manufacturer does it. Hot Toys, distribute more figures, way more figures than anybody else. You see it on YouTube channels all the time. Whenever somebody gets a figure from a different manufacturer, they compare them to Hot Toys. So I'd assume some of these manufacturers should be doing the same thing with their final product. You can see he has his on-point scar above his left eye. That looks the part. He just looks a bit. He looks a bit lifeless. There's not much life to his face, and maybe that has something to do with him not having the rolling eyeball function. But he just looks a little bit lifeless or dead in the face. I don't know why they do this with all the Sly Stallone sculpts, but they make him look very miserable all the time. They make him look very sad. I can understand them doing it with the Rambo figure. He was depressed. He just found out his friend had died. He was walking into the town of hope. So I can understand why they made that face sculpt like that. The Marion Cobretti figure, I don't know why they made him look so sad. He wasn't entirely sad in that movie all the way through that movie. But moving on to the hair, I just want to point out actually before then, this beanie that he has on his head is made out of actual material and it looks absolutely fantastic. I think it's great that they haven't just sculpted a beanie on. It really, really, really adds to the figure. It's not too thick, it's not too bulky. The material is thin enough to absolutely pull it off, and it looks great. But what lets the beanie down is the hair sculpt. It's lacking. Although the hair sculpt puffs out at the sides, as you can see there, as if the beanie is pulling the top of his hair in and the rest of it is flowing out and kind of coming out. But the details in the sculpts, in the final product sculpt, is not great. It's very lacking. There's no real definition or depth to them. The same with the Cobra figure. You can see the hair is there. You can see strands there. You can see what they've tried to do, and it's acceptable. But it's nothing fantastic. I think they could have put a bit more depth into the hair sculpt. If I'm going to be honest, I've seen 20-year-old figures with better and more detailed hair sculpts than that. I do like what they've done here, where they've tried to layer the hair and make it look like, you can see a slight separation. You can see that, it looks like they've tried to layer, make the hair look like it's layered. And it kind of does look the part. But what's going on at the side here, I do not know what's going on at the side here with this section here. It's not detailed enough to make it look like separate strands of hair all flowing backwards. It looks like a bunch of fish eyes or something. I don't know how to explain it, but it just doesn't look the part. It doesn't look great at all this section here at the side. It doesn't look like separate strands of hair all flowing, towards the back. This side here looks slightly better. There's a bit more separation in the strands of hair, but it looks marginally better than this side here. I just have a bit of an issue with this side here. And the hair texture as well, it could have been matte down a little bit. It's got a little bit of a shine off it, and there could have been a bit of a brown wash in it to separate the strands and make it look a little bit more realistic. Would have been a huge step forward on their behalf, and it probably wouldn't have looked so bad in those areas there. And like I said, the paint work on the face is just a little bit flat. I mean, we all know who it is. It's a very young Sylvester Stallone. I don't have buyer's regret. I'm not claiming that I have buyer's regret or anything. I really, really like this figure. But there's just some elements of it that could have been improved on and done a little bit better. As I mentioned, the legs, for starters, are a huge issue, and the gloves and the paint applications. And there is so much potential there. I mean, these figures have way more potential than some other manufacturers. I think there's definitely room for improvement, and they can, in fact, do it. It is completely possible to do it, to paint them better and to get the sculpts better. It's not a total mess. It's not a total write-off. But like I said, there is so much potential in these Sly Stallone figures. I'm still really, really happy with the figure. I know I've pointed out some issues I have with the figure, but that doesn't mean I don't like the figure. I do the same with any other figure, a hot toy or whatever. If there's parts of it I don't like, that I would point out the issues, And the only reason I got the deluxe version is because the only pose I think that I want for this figure is him at the top of the steps in that iconic pose, doing his cheer for himself. So what I'll do now is I will grab the other Sly Stallone figures that I have, and I'll just do a comparison. Just put them side by side and just see what they're like side by side. So here we have the 3 Sly Stallone Shop 1/6 scale Sylvester Stallone figures that I have. We have the Rambo figure from the 1982 movie, we have Rocky from the 1976 movie, and we have Marion Cobretti from the 1986 movie Cobra. So a 10-year gap between these two, and I think the head sculpts kind of do represent that 10-year gap. I think he does look slightly older in this head sculpt here, and he looks narrower in the face and a little bit more chiseled and a bit more ripped. I did mention, I think if I recall correctly, I mentioned in the Marion Cobretti review that this particular Rambo figure doesn't have double jointed arms, but he actually does have double joints. It's just that the bicep, I can feel the double hinge in it, but the bicep just restricts the full range of motion from the double jointed elbows, so it does kind of restrict them, but at least it does have a double joint. And the same with this guy here, as I mentioned, he does have the double jointed elbow. It's just that the bicep kind of restricts it, and you really, really need the double jointed elbow for this Rocky figure because of the boxing poses that you're going to be putting him in, especially if you buy the Ultimate Edition. He does need to be able to put his arms up for any boxing poses that he does, but unfortunately, if I can just get this guy standing back up, the Marion Cobretti figure, for some reason, Sly Stallone Shop decided to only give this one a single joint, and it really restricts his dynamic posing. And anybody who wants to pose this figure in the iconic movie poster pose where he's holding the Yatomatic SMG up to the side of his face on the movie poster, it's not possible to do with the single joint. It just doesn't have the range of motion. He doesn't have the double jointed elbow. And I think at this stage of the game, any 1/6 scale figure from any manufacturer should have double jointed elbows and double jointed knees to get those range of motion for those dynamic poses. Again, if you've seen my review for the Cobra figure, my most popular video to date, it does have its flaws. I'm not going to go through them now, but my biggest issue so far with these figures is that they make them all look very sad. What I'll do in a moment is I'll put a split screen up of the 3 head sculpts together, and we'll kind of go through them. But before I do that, I am going to mention the bodies. As I said, they've used the exact same body for every figure, and I did I mentioned a few minutes ago, there is no problem with using the same body for the same person, because it's all Sylvester Stallone, and that's a fair point. But just pointing something out, just looking at the Cobra figure now, the neck is slightly too long for the Cobra figure. For this guy, it's absolutely fine because he has the hoodie on, and for Rambo, it's absolutely fine because he has the jacket on. But this Cobra figure now, he does come with a jacket, but if you so choose to pose him without the jacket, which he's in the movie more often without the jacket on. I think it's only in the 3rd act of the movie that he wears the jacket very briefly. So I think most people are going to pose him just like this in his more iconic look and his movie poster look. And his neck is just a little bit too long, and it is a bit pale compared to the head sculpt. The colour contrast is a bit kind of out there, it's kind of okay to use this body for all of this era from 1976 all the way out to 1986, which is a 10-year gap. And I do believe those head sculpts do represent that 10-year gap, and the bodies would be the same, you know, for those 10 years, or at least close to the same. But, you know, as I said, the neck is just a little bit too long on the Cobra figure. And it is going to get to a point where they are going to have to refine the body and change the body a little bit. And the same with the paint applications. They make him look very pale in all of his paint apps and on all three of these. Granted, he has some rosiness to his cheeks, the Rambo one. Marion Cobretti was tanned. If you look back at the movie, Marion Cobretti had way more of a tan than he had on the Rocky or the Rambo figure. And I think the reason why they're making the head sculpts all the same shade of paint or the same skin tone is because the bodies are all the same, and they can't have a tanned face with the pale body that they're using. So they need to kind of have a second look at the bodies and maybe paint the bodies or cast the bodies slightly darker when he was more tanned in certain movies. Like, you know, the contrast between Cobra and Rocky 1976 is huge. The skin tones are huge. He's way more tanned, as I said. So let's put these three head sculpts together and just show you what I mean about how miserable they're making him look in every head sculpt. And here we go. Here is the three head sculpts together. Like I said, the Rambo figure on the left hand side, I can understand why they made him look so miserable, because he was miserable in that movie. The Rocky figure, it's a stoic look, you know. My biggest issue is the Marion Cobretti figure. He looks more Rambo, kind of miserable, than he did in Cobra. In Cobra, he was quite often smiling and laughing with Bridget Nielsen. And yeah, they could have given him a different expression, or, you know, just, you know, gave a bit more life to his face and a bit more, like I said, a bit more of a tan. The colour contrast between Cobra's neck there and his head sculpt isn't great at all. Like I said, the neck is too long. The necklace on his neck is way oversized. But like I said, they're making these Sylvester Stallone figures look absolutely miserable and lifeless. And, you know, they need to kind of take another look at it. So there we have it for the three Sly Stallone Shop Sylvester Stallone figures that I personally have. Now, I will mention, unfortunately, my Cobra review and my Rambo review I done before I had a good quality 4K camera, so the quality of those videos aren't anything spectacular. But just something I want to mention and point out that I mentioned earlier on, even though they're using the same body, the legs on this body are absolutely tight. There's nothing wrong with the legs on the Rambo figure. And the same with the Cobra figure. The legs are even tighter. They're absolutely fantastic. They're not going anywhere. Every joint is absolutely tight, and they are all very hefty, bulky figures. There's a bit of weight in them in hand, you know. But this one, however, whatever they've changed about how they're making the body or how they're putting them together, this one here just has absolutely no strength in his upper legs or his hip flexors, whatever you want to call it, which is going to scare me using that magnetic base. I think this is important. This figure was important to have strong. I wonder, is he going to have a little tip? Not because of his ankles, but because of the top of his legs, his hip flexors, whatever you want to call it. They're extremely weak, so only time will tell on that. But the joints on this figure are so much weaker than the previous figures. It's crazy, even though they've used the exact same body. So I don't know what's going on there with the inconsistency with the double jointed elbows or the single jointed elbows and the loose joints in the legs. There needs to be some sort of consistency there from Sly Stallone. So there we have it for the 1/6 scale Rocky Underdog figure from the 1976 movie by the Sly Stallone Shop. I really do like this figure, and I'm so happy that I got it. It's you know, an absolutely epic movie. It is a massive staple in cinematic history. The only pose I really wanted for this guy is the pose you see in front of you there with him at the top of the steps. I didn't see any reason to get the Ultimate Edition for an extra $100. So I'm quite pleased with, you know, what I did get. So if you did like this video, guys, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It makes a huge difference, and it spreads the video around and just gets a bit more exposure for the video for other people to see. So thank you very much. Thanks for watching. It was another long one. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.